Here I am. I had to delete the first show because my audio was not working properly. And look down this time. So yeah, just getting to work. And I'm not going to have this show is not going to be for too long. I'll re-invite Angela back in. Hopefully she's on Discord. But if not, that's fine as well. So here we go. Don't have a lot to basically say, but I wanted to mention that fanatics on either side will, when you're a fanatic, you will censor, gaslight, and compulsively lie in order to protect your faith. Because when you are a fanatic, you are very faithful to your ideology, whether it is right or wrong. You are faithful to it. And I've been getting into a debate with a person, and I know it's ultimately a waste of time. And yes, and yeah, I'm not going to be on that long, but I have been improving limitedly, like about this much, but I've been improving. The laziest man in the world has been improving. And I try not to get perfectionist. I have all these ideas just before I go to bed. And then when I get up, those ideas go right out the window. So I've sent Angela a link, by the way. And so my show is back up and running. And we have Political Woodstock. Yeah, Political Woodstock.
Hello.
Yeah, I saw a couple of those things about the Black Panthers marching through.
Yeah, that was back Black Wall Street, the where they had a community in 1921 that was burned to the ground, and they were commemorating the 100th anniversary of that. And what is unique about that? He's affiliated with another group that brought 1,000, well, African American men and women carrying guns, and they walked on the sidewalk. I was alarmed because he threatened a minister that was in that church that they were standing in front of. And Pamela Smith is one of the three that was standing behind there. And she's still trying to get justice for when she was raped in prison. And it's too far gone as far as statute limitations. But that's why that is unique. And I thought you might like those audio. Concluded.
Well, I'll say this. The left has emboldened some of these unhinged lunatics. And I want to mention that I think it's called, now I can't even remember. My old age is getting the better of me. But I think it's called History Debunked. I think I'll send you the link, but History Debunked.
Oh, yeah, that's a great podcast.
He's the English person, right? I think it's called History. Let me see. Is it?
I remember the label. I don't remember the voice, but I remember liking it. I would love to see that again.
But it's called I think it's called History Debunked, and he talks about the Tulsa Massacre. And
I don't think I heard that one because I would have remembered that. I mean, there was notices everywhere for them to leave town, and they did not take it seriously when they should have. The land was wanted by the white people, to be honest, because it was so close to downtown and oil was booming and the Klan was strong.
Well, oops, hold on a second here. Let's put it in front of me here.
And I do not condone the violence.
Well, let me just play this a little bit here.
The name of Tulsa brings to mind the song written by Burt Bacharach, 24 Hours from Tulsa, sung by Gene Pitney. Though it never rose higher than number 5 in the hit parade in Britain when it was released in 1963, it did help to establish Gene Pitney as an international star. A little over 40 years before the record was released, a dreadful event, or series of events, I should more properly say, took place in Tulsa, which lay hidden from history for many years. However, we've now gone from one extreme to another, from complete amnesia to hysterical exaggeration.
Now, this is the point that he wants to bring up, that there has been, and the same thing happens with the Tuskegee experiment. A lot of people believe that the blacks in the Tuskegee experiment were deliberately infected. No, they were not treated. Let's get history correct and history right. Bad things did happen, but let's not take things out of context. So let's continue.
Of the scale of what happened on May 31st, 1921. If you Google Tulsa Race Massacre, you will soon come up with websites which claim that hundreds of people were killed in the city and that the area where black people lived was attacked and bombed from the air. This is not true, of course, but I'll come to that shortly. On May 30th, 1921, a black teenager called Dick Rowland entered a lift in an office building in the Oklahoma city of Tulsa. The lift was being operated by a 17-year-old white girl, and he either trod on her foot or stumbled and touched her arm or something of that sort, but whatever happened, she started screaming. Rowland ran off. He was arrested the following day, by which time there were rumours that the girl had been sexually assaulted. This was a dangerous situation in those days, and the police were worried that a lynch mob might gather. A large group of black men also thought this might happen, and so they armed themselves with rifles and pistols and made their way towards the police station. This was perhaps not the best move to make, and certainly one more likely to inflame the situation.
Now, have you heard this account before about Tulsa?
Well, he's wrong. He's wrong on many different accounts. It was the Tulsa jail they went to, and it was a group of veterans. Now, people need to understand, at that time, Tulsa was the richest city in the world, like beyond Berlin, Paris, and it was because of oil. Oil was flooding the market and making tons of money. Matter of fact, the city of Tulsa supplied, I believe it was 2/3 of the oil needed for World War I. I mean, think about this as a grand endeavor. And that was for the Allies in Europe. So think of Tulsa as being Dubai back in this time. We're talking a lot of money, and land was money. And they made so much money in this area called Black Wall Street. $1 would stay in their community for 10 years. It would just recirculate. Sarah was the woman that was in the elevator. And Dick Rowland did indeed go onto that elevator. There was an officer nearby. There was a stumble. And Sarah was not a perfect girl. She later died because of an abortion. She was of loose morals. And this I cannot confirm, that Dick and Sarah knew each other and that they had some type of spat on the elevator. But she was a white girl and he was obviously black. Well, and there were bombings Tulsa was bombed from up above, and there were kerosene bombs. And I can tell you the company, I hope I don't get in trouble. Phillips Petroleum, it was their planes, which were about, oh, I don't know by air. By drive, it was 45 minutes.
Let's
They came and bombed.
let's continue the video. So you are disputing what this gentleman says,
Yes.
and
Well, yeah, he's misguided. He's misguided.
you know
Just
what?
like it was the Tulsa jail he went to. They went to, not the police department. And he was going to be lynched.
I'm going to put a link in the chat room, so maybe you can look at it later. I don't know if that can
And the
help you.
Tulsa Tribune is partially responsible. They wrote an article like "Girl Assaulted. We're going to nab a in today." They announced. I mean, in the paper. I mean, that was crazy.
Let's continue with the audio of this video, and
Can I add one more thing?
Go ahead.
Not well known, but there is a document through the NAACP, through a group that escaped Tulsa and went to New York City, that there was notices to leave town. They let them know you need to leave town. Now, I do not agree with this, but I'm just saying this is what occurred, and that's never told.
Again,
okay, go ahead. Concluded.
You know what? There are a lot of different accounts. Let's continue with this, though.
They had evidence.
As it was, the police had things under control, and there was no chance of the youth being handed over to a lynch mob. However, a number of white men took exception to the sight of a large group, perhaps 75 or 100 black men, carrying guns in their part of town. As in many American cities at that time, Tulsa was segregated along racial lines, with black people in one part and white people in another. The sight of 75 to 100 black men, all armed, appearing in a white district was enough to cause serious consequences. Some white men went to fetch their own guns, and shooting broke out. In the gun battle which followed, the black men had the better of it, and they managed to shoot dead 10 white people for the loss of only 2 of their own side. This suggests strongly that there were a lot more black men with guns during that encounter than there were white. Things escalated rapidly, with a large crowd of white people infuriated at the death of 10 of their own people. They went off in search of guns themselves, and then rampaged through the black district, setting fire to some buildings. There are 2 things to consider here. The first is that it only takes 1 or 2 buildings to catch fire in a city and be left ablaze without anybody putting them out, for a large fire to develop, which is going to burn down whole streets. Chicago was famously burned to the ground after a cow allegedly kicked over an oil lamp. The story may be apocryphal, but it's certain that a small fire in 1871 soon grew to be a big one, which practically destroyed the city. We remember too the Great Fire of London. The same thing happened. A small fire got out of control and destroyed most of the city. This is probably what happened in Tulsa, with the fire brigade being unable to reach burning buildings, either because of the crowd or because they were deliberately intimidated and walled off by angry whites. The second thing to mention is the stories that this destruction was caused by white people in aeroplanes dropping bombs or flaming missiles from the air, which is a story which circulated after the event and has been exaggerated over years. There was no evidence at all for this happening. It was just one of those mad rumours. A moment's thought will show you how ridiculous the idea is. In 1921, the light aircraft, which is what these were, had open cockpits. I don't know if any viewers have ever flown in an aeroplane with an open cockpit. I have in a Tiger Moth. And I can say with absolute certainty that you could not strike a match or light anything under those circumstances. It's simply far too windy. You can't even hear yourself.
Now, okay, what about...
Let me at him.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me add them. Phillips Petroleum was more advanced in the airplanes, aeronautics. They designed the first spacesuit that was to be used in the space time, the space game. So they were more advanced. Now I can find out what type of planes they use, but they were definitely bombed. They had to fly low over the roofs to drop those bombs. I, I, there were 60 city blocks, and this was planned. They had the fire trucks on standby so that the white neighborhood would not catch fire, as it was somewhat close to this black neighborhood. They refused to do anything to put out the fires. They would go in, rob the house of jewels, furnitures, pianos, and these were really nice homes. 70% of the domestics in that area that were maids and such worked in the neighborhood for other black families. You know, we're talking the families even had planes. We're talking wealthy millionaires. There were so many millionaires in this area that was 60 city blocks. I'm floored at the things that he said. It's obvious he didn't do a lot of research on this one. I've heard him before. Now I want to question those others, that I heard, that I enjoyed, because I'm not for sure if he does his research well. He's saying it was exaggerated. That's not true. And they even set up machine guns on top of buildings. There was some hospital that was nearby in that area, or they had their own hospital. They set up machine guns and just killed the black citizens. It was mayhem. They saw them as dirt, and they wanted to get rid of the dirt, and they, for the most part, accomplished it. They weren't even allowed to rebuild their businesses on land that had been burned. That was a city ordinance that was passed after the massacre or riot. He called it a riot. That's actually referred to as a massacre. And they have found bodies of like a man that had a bullet inside of his head. It was a mass grave in one of the cemeteries, unmarked, of course. Concluded, because I just can't.
Let's continue.
Speak. As for the idea that anybody would be fooling around with petrol bombs or pieces of cloth soaked in turpentine, which I've heard, it's absolutely nuts. The biplanes had wooden frames with canvas stretched over them, which had been varnished to make them waterproof. Those things went up like torches if anything burning touched them. It would be suicidal to start playing with matches and petrol.
He's so wrong.
Okay, go ahead. You think?
I'm sorry, I just had to. There was some light cargo planes. I think those were late 30s, early 40s that were wrapped in canvas. What they had is
21
from World War I and after, they had the double airplane, where they had double wings on each side. And it's true, they had to be very cautious, but it was a kerosene bomb. It wasn't like a Molotov cocktail. This was huge, or more sizable than a Molotov cocktail, which I think is what he's describing. But he's just wrong on the planes. I know a little bit about the planes from that era, but I need to be more specific before I really quote what type of planes they used. They were from Phillips Petroleum. And again, this is the richest city in the world at that time. They're not going to have some second, third rate airplane to drop these bombs from. They're going to be cautious and safe as they can to preserve themselves, but to massacre the other citizens. Concluded, unless you have a question.
Well, I'm going to play on. He's got about less than a minute and a half left. So let's.
Okay, I'll try to hold my cool. Go ahead.
Biplane flying along. In fact, the aeroplane's been chartered by the police to see what was going on from above, just as we see the police now using helicopters to keep track of riots and demonstrations. There was certainly a lot of damage to property during the Tulsa race massacre, but not a very great loss of life. In 2001, a thorough investigation of all the available records showed that just 36 people had actually died. That means after the 10 white people had been killed and 2 black people in the initial fight, another 24 black people were killed in revenge. As for Dick Rowland, the boy whose arrest sparked all the trouble, the police released him because it was obvious that he hadn't actually done anything other than accidentally brush against a white girl. He left Tulsa as soon as he was released and never returned. I thought it worth talking about this because with the 100th anniversary of the events in Tulsa coming up on May 31st, there'll be a lot of exaggerated accounts floating about, and it might be good to remind ourselves of the facts.
We are here.
All right.
Let me at this guy who does not do any research. You know, the number that is officially posted is 300, but a woman that was friendly with the Klan that was present at the massacre watched them dump bodies into the Arkansas rivers. And she, her employers were Klan members. Also, they were the founders of Phillips Petroleum. So I take what she has to say as important. And she said the number was over 3,000. You know, just, oh my gosh, for him to say only 10. And only recently have we started to find some of the mass graves that hold these victims from the massacre. Again, some of them were found with bullets in their skull. That's how they were killed. So, again, I wonder if some of that's from on top of the hospital with the machine gun. There is a journal by a teacher. I forget her first name, last name Parrish. And I think that used to be on the internet for free, but someone got the copyright. And there's a lot of people wanting to make movies about this, but there are a lot of different accounts. But death happened. You know, it was awful. They ran over a man with a truck over and over that was dead in the streets. It looked like a war zone. How dare he say there was only 10? Because it's obvious if you look at the official report that they listed the deaths at 300, but it was a lot more. Concluded.
Well, he said that there was 24, and that includes 36 people dead, including 10 whites and the 2 blacks in the initial thing. And look,
that's wrong.
And you're saying that that is wrong and that is incorrect. Again,
well, because his whole podcast was full of mistakes. I think it was sloppy research. I don't think he probably intended for it to be that way.
Yeah, but Angela, here's the thing. One of the reasons people are suspicious, and I don't know if you'd agree with this or not, is because there has been so much censorship, both on the left and on the right. The left is censoring now more than ever. And there are subjects I'm not even going to get into, but even like welfare statistics and murder statistics. Google has changed its algorithms, which is a form of censorship. And, they're changing things around to suit a narrative, not to suit the truth.
Well, yes, they've always had a narrative, but now it's more streamlined. That's true. But again, getting back to but I used to call it a riot because that's what everybody referred to it, the massacre. I've talked to all 3 of the remaining victims of this massacre. You know, I took care of Mother Randall at one point by making sure she had water. This was during the time of the 100th anniversary. You know, I'm within some of those circles. And it did happen as I know it to have happened. They confirm it. There's a lot of videos about from the survivors from the 80s. A gentleman was trying to get reparations for the victims, which they should have because they lost their homes.
Yeah, but don't you think that this issue should, because the thing is, they don't debate the issue anymore. And anytime you censor a critic, they're always going to think, because a lot of times people do not censor lies. They often censor truth.
Well, that might be true. I'm just saying he did horrible research and maybe he didn't intend to. He really should correct his podcast when it comes to this matter.
The original account of the Tulsa riot or the Tulsa massacre,
Hmm.
the amount that he was saying, and now they've changed it.
No,
And
some of the basic, the Dick Rowland, and they released him to save him because they were going to barge into the jail. That's what they were planning to. That's why the sheriff removed him. Also, the sheriff, it's not the police, it was the sheriff that was in control of the massacre. They mastermind this. And he deputized many people to be deputies. And the sheriff today is still in Tulsa, has that right to deputize people. Not much has changed in the Tulsa Sheriff Department since that time. That is why I think it was 2015, I helped with a group of people to get rid of that Sheriff Glanz, Sheriff Stanley Glanz. We got a grand jury investigation into him. They were using the same tactics that they used in the 20s. Nothing had changed. And he had really dirty, filthy hands. And the grand jury indicted him and recommended for him to resign, which is what he did. That was not easy. And that's fallout from that Tulsa massacre. I get passionate about this because I remember all the things, awful, awful things that I heard, that I documented. And it makes me sick, nauseous.
Angela, we're running out of time, and I do have to get myself to work.
Can we carry this on at a different time if you want to? Maybe you want a different topic, and that's fine.
Absolutely.
But this is something I get passionate about.
I will carry on this topic when I have more time to dissect it and put it through. It is hard to find the alternative story, though, because a lot of it has been censored by the internet. So that right there does send out red flags to me. And the leftist establishment does control the narrative right now. And
it's still the truth, though, what I said. Even if this other narrative you're talking about,
even if it's true, Angela, the other narrative, when you censor, you bring credibility to the other narrative. When you censor the way in which you do, you bring credibility to the other narrative. And there are things, by the way, that have been censored that are true. Colin Flaherty's book.
Oh, yes.
Colin Flaherty's book. Hold on a second. Colin Flaherty's channel. It's very true.
But I don't see anything wrong with holding somebody accountable for like obvious bad research, but to not censor them, but hold them accountable, saying this is wrong and this is why it's wrong, and present the evidence, which there's a lot of evidence that could disprove him. Concluded.
But at this moment, Angela, on average, when leftists don't like things being said or told, they do not debate or bring forth evidence. They only censor and smear. I'm sorry I'm getting upset, but that's just the truth.
No, I'm saying I understand that, but there's nothing wrong with holding somebody accountable for, obviously, like this podcast he did. It was false information because he did not do his research correctly. Like he kept saying the Tulsa police when it was the sheriff department or it was the jail. There was definitely planes there. There was obvious evidence, like that NAACP that I told you about, where they put notices for people to leave town. They had the notices. There's pictures of the notices. It happened. It grieves me. It grieves me. And then all the dead. And I've talked to family, descendants of the original victims. Okay.
Going over the same topic again, and I'm telling you my issue, and you're not getting my issue. And I'm saying again, my issue is this: they censor and then they smear,
but not everybody does that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with holding somebody accountable for obviously bad research. I agree with you on the cancel culture. I'm 100% agreeing with you on that part.
I'm getting upset because you know, and you're not, you seem not, I mean, I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying. On average, what they do is they just censor and then they smear. And they do not give any person due process to defend themselves. If this person is wrong, which he may be, I'm not an expert on the subject of the Tulsa massacre. If he is wrong, hold on a second. If he is wrong, then it deserves due process. And the manner in which they censor is not conducive to due process. It's about smearing, or first censoring and then smearing. That's what they do. Anyway, I have to go.
Well, I agree with you that they do that. I'm just saying there's nothing wrong with holding someone back accountable. Like if I were to write something in the comments, I would put links to evidence.
Angela, we agree on that. We agree on that. But that's not what they're doing. Okay? That's not what they do. They censor and they
We
smear.
can discuss this on his next podcast. By the way, please help Truth and Transparency and Merit by clicking the like button on this episode. It would be endearing if you wouldn't mind helping someone out by just hitting the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. There's a lot of different topics that are covered. They have a website with merch on it if you're interested, and it's full of relevant content. So if you're seeking truth and you think it matters, tune in to Transparency and Merit. Concluded.
And I want to end on this. I don't have people that automatically that agree with me. And again, Angela is a perfect example. She agrees with me on a lot of things, but on some things she does not. And I agreed with this guy when I first heard him. It sounded like he was telling the truth, but I do not have an extensive knowledge on that. And I'm willing to be proven wrong and even change my outlook. Anyway, this has been Transparency and Merit. Like Angela said, like, subscribe, and visit the website.